Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to All Praise Picks. Today we're looking at the NFL. It's week 15, and we have the New York Jets playing against the Jacksonville Jaguars in Jacksonville on December 15th, 2024. So currently, both these teams are 3-10. I think the Jets are a lot more disappointing than the Jaguars, especially with Aaron Rodgers playing a full season, and the Jets are only 3-10. But I do like the Jets in this game. I think this is a nice bounce back spot, and their offense has been playing a lot better recently. So I have a few parlays for you guys. This will be a quicker video. I'll just go straight to the parlays. But as always, I'll break down the lines, give you my thoughts, and hope if you tap in, we can all win. So these are the first two parlays that I have, and they're focused on Aaron Rodgers' passing yards and his statistics overall. I do think that he can have a pretty good game in this one. Jacksonville is one of the worst teams when it comes to defending the quarterback position. They give up the second most yards, their fifth fewest interceptions, and the sixth most touchdowns to the quarterback position. So I think that Aaron Rodgers, who had a great game last week against Miami, could have another great game in this one. So looking at the parlays, they're both at essentially even money at plus 100 and plus 110. I have Aaron Rodgers to have over 23 completions in this game, to have over 200 passing yards, and I also have him to have over 50 passing yards to either Davante Adams or Garrett Wilson. And I do think that both of these receivers could go over 50 yards in this game. As I mentioned, Aaron Rodgers had a pretty good game in his last game in Florida. He played against the Miami Dolphins. He had 27 completions on 39 attempts for 339 passing yards and one passing touchdown. And I think that the Jacksonville Jaguars defense is much worse than Miami's defense. As I mentioned, they give the second most passing yards to the quarterback position. And I think that Aaron Rodgers, who has had over 30 passing attempts in his last three games, and in those games he had 27, 21, and 22 completions, has a good chance of going over 23 completions in this game. And I do like him to have over 200 passing yards. He had 319 in his last game, and just fell short of 200 in his last two games before that, with 185 and 184 passing yards. So I do think that he has a good chance of going over 200 in this game against a pretty bad Jaguars defense. And at plus 100 and plus 110, if you invest 1 unit on these parlays, you'll have a 100% return or 110% return on your investment. I put 1 unit on both of these ones because I feel pretty evenly about the chances of Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson going over 50 passing yards. And I'll get into their respective statistics in the next parlays. So this is a straight bet that I liked as well, just for Aaron Rodgers to have over 2 passing touchdowns. So in his last 3 games, he went over 2 passing touchdowns twice, going over against Indianapolis and Seattle, and he just had one against Miami, but he had a lot of chances for a second passing touchdown, and the game did go over to overtime. So I think especially if they had the ball back, they would have been able to generate another passing touchdown. And as I mentioned, the Jaguars' passing defense is just atrocious this season, and Aaron Rodgers should be able to read the defenses and be a pretty efficient quarterback. And I like his chances to have over 2 passing touchdowns. And those touchdowns could go to anybody, doesn't matter, as long as he has 2 passing touchdowns. So at plus 130, I put 1 unit on this parlay for 130% return on investment. And as always, just have bankroll consciousness and an understanding of your finances when deciding to place these bets. So the next couple of parlays in this video are just focused on a combination of Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams receiving and potential touchdowns. But in this parlay at plus 230, I have Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams to go over 50 receiving yards, as well as for the Jets to win the game and for the Jets to score more than 20 points in the game. I think this is just pretty good overall value. Both Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams can pop off for a big play, and I think Garrett Wilson, while he is the number 1 target on the Jets, Davante Adams also has a good chance of just having monster games as well, especially against bad defenses. So I do think that both receivers could have a chance of going over 50 yards in this game. But looking at Garrett Wilson, he's gone over 40 yards in 4 out of his last 5 games. And in his most recent game against Miami, he had 7 receptions for 114 yards and a long of 42. So that just shows that he has big play potential. And I think especially if he has the receptions in this game, if he goes over 5 receptions, he likely will go over 50 receiving yards. And the same is true for Davante Adams. So Davante has gone over 60 receiving yards in 4 out of his last 5 games, and he's also had at least 5 receptions in those games. So I just think, especially if the volume's there and if Rodgers is passing the ball, both receivers could probably go over 50 receiving yards. And I also have the Jets money line and for them to score 20 points in this game. I just think it's a bounce back spot. Like, they honestly could have beat the Dolphins in Miami, and ended up losing it in overtime. And I think that that probably leaves a sour taste in their mouth. And they're still trying, and they still have a lot of pride, especially with the amount of superstars on this team. And the defense has still been playing well. So I think that, especially going up against a backup quarterback and Mac Jones, the Jets money line is a pretty good play in this one. And I think they're pretty undervalued, especially um, against a Jaguars team that is one of the worst teams in the NFL. And I like the chances of scoring 20 points. As I mentioned before, I like Rodgers' chances of having 2 touchdowns. So that's 14 points right there. And the other 6 points could come from field goals or another touchdown from anybody else on the team. Also, Mac Jones is a pretty, I guess he's a good backup quarterback, but when he has extended playing time as a starter, the defenses start to understand how to play him, and he is uh, I guess he has a lot of turnover potential, I should say, which could lead to a short field for the Jets and easy points coming. But at plus 230, if you invest 1 unit on this parlay, you have a 230% return on your investment. As always, just have bankroll consciousness and understanding of your finances when deciding to place these bets. So this next parlay at plus 330 is kind of just a combination of what I said before. So I had Rodgers to have over 2 passing touchdowns, as well as for Garrett Wilson to have one of those touchdowns in the game. And his touchdown could come as a rush or a receiving touchdown, but also for Davante Adams to have over 50 passing yards. Um, I think that both receivers have a good chance of scoring a touchdown in this game. Um, in terms of Garrett Wilson's touchdown production recently, he's had a touchdown in well, he has had a touchdown actually in 4 weeks. So I do think that this is a bounce back spot for him to score a touchdown. And I also think that Davante Adams has a good chance of going over 50 receiving yards. At plus 230, I put half a unit on this parlay just because of the increased odds, but uh, that would be a 330% return on your investment. And per usual, just have bankroll consciousness and understanding of your finances when deciding to place these bets. So this parlay is essentially the exact same, except I have for Davante Adams to be the one to score a touchdown and for Garrett Wilson to go over 50 yards. So Davante Adams has had a touchdown in back-to-back games, and I think that he could have a touchdown in a third game in a row. He and Rodgers have increased continuity, especially being on the same team now for a little bit more than 2 months, and I just think that it's a trend that is clear there for Davante Adams. But as I mentioned, Garrett Wilson could also be the one to score a touchdown because these receivers are essentially like 1A and 1B, similar to like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and either of them could score a touchdown. But I do think that they have a good chance of both going over 50 yards. At plus 350, if you invest 1 unit, I put half a unit on this one, so I have 1 unit total on both parlays. But at plus 350, that's a 350% return on your investment. And always just have bankroll consciousness and understanding of your finances when deciding to place these bets. So this is the long shot parlay that I have for this game. It's at plus 550. I put 1 unit on this one, and I actually feel pretty good about it. So I have Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams to have over 50 receiving yards, Rodgers to have 2 passing touchdowns, Jets to be leading the game or at least tying the game at halftime, and for the Jets to win the game by more than 5 points, and also for them to score more than 20 points. I think the Jets defense could limit the Jaguars offense in this game, and if the Jets are able to score over 20 points, I could see the Jaguars scoring less than 14, just scoring 2 touchdowns, and that would cover the minus 4.5. And I also think that the Jets will come out on fire essentially on offense and start fast. And I think it will take some time for Mac Jones to adjust to the defensive coverages that he's receiving, which will lead to the Jets either leading or tying at halftime. And I already spoke upon Wilson and Adams receiving potential in this game, as well as for Rodgers to have a great game throwing the ball. But plus 550 invest 1 unit on this parlay. It is a long shot parlay, so I just would be mindful of that. But we did hit our last long shot parlay for the Hawks versus Bucks game in yesterday's video, so hopefully we can continue that momentum and win another one. But at plus 550, if you invest 1 unit on this parlay, that's a 550% return on your investment. As always, just have bankroll consciousness and understanding of your finances when deciding to place these bets if you decide to place it with me. So those are all the bars I have for the Jets versus Jaguars game. I'll have more NFL videos coming out later today. Be sure to like, comment, and share on this video, as well as subscribe to my channel. Until next time, peace.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to All Praise Picks. Today we're looking at the NFL. We have a pretty good Thursday night football game. The Denver Broncos are playing the Los Angeles Chargers in Los Angeles on December 19th, 2024. So currently the Broncos are 9-5, which is second place in the AFC West, and the Chargers are 8-6, which is third place in the AFC West. So a pretty big game for both these teams to get wild card positioning in the AFC West. With the Chiefs leading the AFC West, both these teams are looking to get into the playoffs, and I think that this game will kind of define which team will get into the playoffs. So I'm excited to watch this game and have a few parlays for you guys. As always, breaking the lines, giving my thoughts, and in this video, I'll give you a quick recap of the parlays that we had on Sunday and Monday Night Football, as well as the parlays in this game. So here's a quick recap of the parlays that we had on Sunday. These are from the Jets and Jacksonville Jaguars video that I had. Pretty good payout overall. We had Rodgers for 2 passing touchdowns, as well as Garrett Wilson anytime touchdown and Devontae Adams anytime touchdown. They both scored touchdowns in those games, as well as having over 50 yards. And the Jets were able to win the game and score over 20 points in the game. So had pretty good payouts in that game, and we were able to carry it on into Monday Night Football with these parlays. In the Atlanta versus Vegas game, Bijan was able to get over 75 rushing receiving yards. I think he had over 120 total rushing receiving yards in the game, as well as Drake London to get over 50 yards and Kyle Pitts to have over 25 yards. So a pretty good plus 145 payout there. And we also had Kirk Cousins to go under 33 passing attempts, and he went well under 33 passing attempts. And Atlanta was able to win the first half. And while the game was close, I did feel pretty confident in Atlanta winning the game. And unfortunately, Bijan Robinson was unable to score a touchdown. I do like his odds of scoring a touchdown in their next week's game, especially since Kirk Cousins was benched. So Michael Penix will be the new quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons, and we'll see how he plays. But I think the offense will honestly run through Bijan Robinson, and I'm sure to have a video out on that game before Sunday. But now looking at the other Monday Night Football game that we had, it was honestly a really good payout. The Vikings were playing the Bears, and we had Aaron Jones to score an anytime touchdown, as well as 50 rushing and receiving yards, able to cash that out. And he also had 50 rushing yards in the game, so plus 125 payout as well. And then we also looked at TJ Hawkinson to have over 25 receiving yards, as well as over 42 receiving yards, and he was able to cash us out as well, and just did well overall in the game. He had over 50 receiving yards in the game and over 5 receptions for a nice plus 125 and plus 130 payout. And then now looking at Jordan Addison, he also played really well in the game, and the Vikings were able to win that game through Hawkinson, Addison, and Justin Jefferson. But honestly, the really big payout for this game was this next parlay at a plus 550. Put $50 on that one for a nice 325 payout. Vikings were able to win the first half, and Hawkinson, Addison, and Aaron Jones honestly just showed up in the game. And I'm really excited to show you my parlays for this game and hope to continue the momentum into Week 16 of the NFL. So before I get into my parlays, be sure to like, comment on this video, as well as share and subscribe to my channel. Appreciate you guys for watching. As I mentioned before in the previous videos, just do this for the enjoyment of sports investments, as well as to make everybody money. And hopefully the information in this video is good for the game that happens, and it's well researched. So if you guys appreciate the video or appreciate the content, be sure to subscribe. So now looking into the first couple parlays that I have in this game. At plus 130, I have Gus Edwards and Kamani Vidal, who are the 2 running backs for the Chargers, to one have over 25 yards for Gus Edwards, as well as Kamani Vidal to have over 12 receiving yards. So looking at Vidal, I'll call him KV in this video. So KV is really the pass-catching running back for the Chargers, especially since J.K. Dobbins was injured earlier this season. And last week he had 3 targets for 2 receptions and 13 yards, and he is favored for over 2 catches in this game. I do like that prop as well. I kind of like it at like 3 or 4 catches in this game if you can get it. But I just really expect him to have increased playing time, especially on 3rd down and the 2-minute drill. Also on the season, the Broncos are top 10 in targets, receptions, and receiving yards allowed to the running backs this season. And looking at a few running backs versus Denver this season, so Kareem Hunt, who honestly isn't that much of a pass-catching running back, had 7 catches for 65 yards. Justice Hill, who is a pretty good receiving running back, had 3 for 43 for the Ravens. As well as Bijan had 4 for 28. Derrick Henry, who never really catches passes, had 1 reception for 27 yards. Nick Chubb, who also doesn't really catch passes, had 2 for 48 yards. And also, KV's first NFL touch went for a 38-yard touchdown versus Denver in Denver this season, and that was a receiving touchdown. So I just think that they'll focus on him more, especially offensively in the passing game. And I like his chances for over 12 receiving yards in this game. And lastly, for Gus Edwards, While the Broncos are top five in rush defense, I just think that the Chargers, especially with Harbaugh as their coach, will continually run the ball. And I think that if Gus Edwards gets over 10 carries in this game, I don't really see him getting under 25 rushing yards. So I really like the odds at plus 130, and I put 1 unit on that one for a payout of 130%. Per usual, just have bankroll consciousness and understanding of your finances when deciding to place these bets if you decide to place it with me. Now looking at the parlay on the right side at plus 150, similar parlay, I have Vidal for over 12 receiving yards, and then Cortland Sutton for over 50 receiving yards. So Sutton's line right now, at the time of recording this video, is at 63.5, and he's really become the focal point of the passing offense for the Broncos in the last 7 weeks. He's gone over this mark in 6 out of the last 7 games, and he only went under versus the Colts, which was a pretty winny game after watching the condensed game film. And being over in the last 7 weeks, I think that Cortland Sutton is just going to bounce back in this game. And I really think he has a good chance of bouncing back against a passing defense that has been honestly atrocious in the last couple of weeks. So versus LA, the number one wide receiver has gone for a ton of yards, including Mike Evans going for 9 catches for 159 yards and 2 touchdowns last week. Drake London had 6 for 86 yards, and even Raymond McLeod for the Falcons had 95 yards. Zay Flowers for the Ravens had 5 for 62 yards, and Bateman on the Ravens only had 2 catches, but he had 43 yards and a touchdown. And Jamar Chase, who's a stud in his own right, had 7 catches for 75 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Higgins in the same game had 9 for 148 yards and a touchdown. So I really like Cortland Sutton as the number one wide receiver for Denver to have over 50 yards in this game. Moreover, he's had the second most air yards in the NFL with 729 over the last 7 weeks, only second to Calvin Ridley. And Calvin Ridley against the Chargers had 5 catches for 84 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I really like his chances for over 50 yards, and I kind of like his chances for a touchdown in this game, which you'll see in the later parlays. But at plus 150, if you invest 1 unit on this parlay, you have a 150% return on investment. Per usual, just have bankroll consciousness and understanding of your finances when deciding to place these bets. If you do decide to place it with me. Now looking at the next parlay at plus 145, I have Gus Edwards for over 25 rushing yards, as well as Cortland Sutton and Ladd McConkey to have over 50 receiving yards. So I really like Ladd McConkey in this spot, especially as Herbert's number one passing receiver. So Denver on the season is number 20 in the NFL in receiving yards allowed to the wide receiver position, as well as number 23 in receiving receptions to the wide receiver. And McConkey has had over 5 receptions in 4 straight games, so I do like his chances for over 5.5 receptions if you want to bet that. But he's also gone over 50 yards in 7 straight games, so I do like him for over 50 yards in this game as well. And his last game versus Denver, he had 8 targets for 4 receptions and 43 yards. But that was earlier in the season. I think that McConkey has kind of gotten ingratiated with the offense and has become the number one target over Quentin Johnson. And even in that game versus Denver, he had the most targets on the team. So at plus 145, I really like the odds on this payout. And really, I think it's just Gus Edwards as the player in this parlay that could honestly ruin it, because if Denver continues to have really good rush defense and Gus Edwards doesn't have the carries, then he could probably go under 25 yards if he only has 7 or 8 carries in the game. But at plus 145, I'm willing to take the risk, and for a 145% payout, it's pretty good odds. And per usual, just have bankroll consciousness and understanding of your finances when deciding to place these bets. So these next set of parlays are focused on Cortland Sutton and Ladd McConkey to go over 6 receptions in the game, as well as over 50 yards and over 75 yards. And you can see the different payouts, and I would just suggest that you guys pick the best one for you. While I place all these bets, I kind of do like both of them to go over 6 receptions and over 75 yards in the game. I think as the number one receivers for each of these teams, and in the game being indoors in SoFi Stadium, the odds of a shootout in this game in terms of both quarterbacks just throwing the ball in the field, especially Bo Nix, is pretty high. And I do like Sutton more than McConkey to go over his 50 and potentially 75 receiving yards in this game, because on the season, Cortland Sutton, especially in the last 7 games, has had the 3rd highest average depth of target amongst wide receivers in the top 20 of receiving yards at 13.2 yards per reception. So I just think it's easier for him to go over 75 yards than Ladd McConkey, who probably needs to have 8 receptions in this game. But Herbert does favor him a lot as a number 1 wide receiver, and I do see McConkey getting easy slant routes or just easy screens that could go for a big play. But at plus 125 for Ladd McConkey to have over 6 receptions and Sutton to have over 50 receiving yards. And then at plus 225 for McConkey to have over 6 receptions and Sutton to have over 75 receiving yards. They're pretty good payouts overall, and those would be my top 2 bets amongst the ones on this page. But I also do like the one at a plus 155 for McConkey to have over 50 receiving yards and Sutton to have over 6 receptions, as well as at plus 300. It's just a really good payout overall for Sutton to have over 6 receptions, which I'm pretty sure he'll get the targets in this game. And the Chargers defense has not been good, especially lately. And McConkey to have over 75 receiving yards. All he needs to do is have one big play to get over 75 receiving yards. And I put half a unit on each of these parlays for 2 units total. And per usual, just have bank consciousness and understanding of your finances when deciding to place these bets. So now these couple parlays are just focused on the Broncos leading the game. I think that the Broncos have a good chance of keeping the game close and potentially winning this game. And at plus 300 and plus 333, both of these parlays are pretty similar. So on the parlay on the left side at plus 300, I have the Broncos plus 4.5 essentially not to lose the game by more than 5 points, as well as Cortland Sutton to have over 50 receiving yards and Bo Nix to have over 200 passing yards, and Will Lutz to make 2 field goals in this game, and the Broncos score over 17 points. I think the game being indoors, and especially because the Broncos were honestly like demolished by the Chargers in their last game versus the Chargers. Like LA was up 23-0 in the fourth quarter. And I think the Broncos kind of have that nasty taste in their mouth and want to bounce back, especially versus a division rival. So I do like the chances of scoring over 17 points in this game. And I think that the Chargers, honestly, they do have a really good red zone defense. I think both teams have a top 5 red zone defense in the NFL. So Willis go over 2 field goals in this game is pretty likely, especially because he has a good range from field goal kicking. And I think that the Chargers will be passing the ball, which will lead to Bo Nix having over 200 passing yards, as well as Cortland Sutton to have over 50 receiving yards, because he'll probably be targeting Cortland Sutton the most out of their pass catchers. And honestly, it's just dependent on the Broncos keeping this game close. The Chargers just they got demolished by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in their last game. The Buccaneers put up over 40 points on them at home in SoFi Stadium. I think the Chargers will try to bounce back in this one, but with this game being a divisional game, there's familiarity with both teams, and I think that usually division games are pretty close, especially since both these teams are pretty good and are vying for a playoff spot in the AFC. So plus 300 if you're investing on the part on the left side, you have a 300% return on investment. As usual, just have bank consciousness and understanding your finances when deciding to place these bets. And similarly, on the parlay on the right side at plus 333, really it's just receiving yard totals for McConkey and Josh Palmer, who are the receivers for the LA Chargers. I think that Justin Herbert will probably be passing the ball more often in this game, especially if the Broncos are leading the game, which will lead to him having over 200 passing yards. I think that most of those yards will go to McConkey at 50 and Josh Palmer at 25, who is honestly a pretty underrated receiver, and I do like his receiving props in this game. I think his line at this game was at 28.5 at the time of recording this game, but I do really like the Broncos defense overall. They're a really stingy defense, and with Pat Surtain at corner, and they're really good rush defense, I think they could hold the Chargers under 26 points. And at plus 233, it's kind of just playing both sides of this. If it's a high-scoring game, I favor the plus 300, and if it's a low-scoring game, I obviously favor the plus 333 because I think the Broncos could end up winning the game even if it is a low-scoring game or a high-scoring game. But at plus 333, if you're investing on this parlay, you have a 333% return on investment. Per usual, just have bankroll consciousness and understanding your finances when deciding to place these bets. If you decide to place it with me. Going off of the Broncos leading the game, I do like Kamani Vidal, who I mentioned earlier in this video, to have over 12 receiving yards, as well as Bo Nix to have over 2 passing touchdowns. So if the Broncos are leading the game, Bo Nix probably does get them into the end zone in some way or form. And it's probably through passing the ball. He's been passing the ball a lot more this season, especially lately. I think it's at over 33 pass attempts in the last 5 games. And if he is able to get 2 passing touchdowns, it will lead to the Chargers losing the game in the second and third quarter, which will lead to more snaps by Kamani Vidal as their pass-catching running back. And I would do like his chances of over 12 receiving yards, who the Broncos have struggled against earlier this season, as I mentioned. And then looking at the parlay at the right side at plus 450, I also have Vidal to have over 12 receiving yards, but also Cortland Sutton to have 50 yards and a touchdown. And he really doesn't score touchdowns unless it's a receiving touchdown, but he's had 4 touchdowns in the last 5 games, and I like his chances just because of how much targets he's getting from Bo Nix to score a touchdown in this game too. As I mentioned before, our number one wide receivers versus the Chargers have honestly feasted versus their defense. Mike Evans had 2 touchdowns. Zay Flowers, while he didn't have a touchdown, he had 5 for 62, and Bateman, who is the number 2 receiver for the Ravens, had a touchdown on a long touchdown reception. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Chase had 2 touchdowns, and Higgins had a touchdown, and Calvin Ridley on the Titans, who are one of the worst teams in the NFL, had 2 touchdowns as well as 84 yards in the game. So I do think that Courtland Sutton, as the number 1 wide receiver, does have a good chance of scoring a touchdown as long as he's not being double covered, but he could have a touchdown on a big play or a broken play versus his Chargers defense. But as plus 320 and plus 450, if you invest 1 unit on these parlays, you have a 320 and 450% return on investment. I mentioned that I put half a unit on the plus 320 parlay just because I don't really like betting on over passing touchdowns, especially on a short week Thursday Night Football. But I do like Courtland Sutton's chances of scoring a touchdown in this game as number 1 wide receiver. But per usual, just have bank consciousness and understanding your finances when deciding to place these bets if you decide to place it with me. So now looking at a few long shot parlays I have in this game, starting with the one at plus 575. I have Bo Nix for over 200 passing yards, Courtland Sutton for over 75 receiving yards, Herbert for over 200 passing yards, and McConkey for over 50 receiving yards, as well as Cameron Dicker for over 8 kicking points. I did mention Bo Nix, Sutton, and McConkey before, but I do think that especially if the Chargers are not winning in this game in the third and fourth quarter, they'll be having to pass the ball, and I do like Herbert's chances of over 200 passing yards because he had over 200 passing yards in their previous game versus the Broncos. And I also like their kicker, Cameron Dicker, to have over 8 kicking points. And honestly, he could catch this from over like 2 field goals and 2 touchdowns. That would be 8 kicking points right there. So I just like his chances, and he has a pretty long range. I also like Will Lutz as well, but I just kind of lean towards the home team when it comes to the kickers because they tend to play better overall. But I put a little bit more than half a unit on this parlay at a plus 575 for a potential 575% payout. For usual, just have bank consciousness, understanding your finances when deciding to place these bets if you just have to place it with me. The next long shot parlay I have is at plus 750. So I have the Broncos to win the first quarter, or at least not lose the first quarter by more than a point, as well as to win the game. I think that's like, especially when it comes to the first quarter, it kind of just depends on who wins the coin flip. I think if the Broncos win the coin flip, they may actually pick to have the ball because their defense plays better with a lead, and the Chargers may choose to give the ball up and choose to have the ball in the second half, which will lead to the Broncos having an increased chance of scoring points. So I do like the chances of keeping the first quarter close, especially if they're able to score in the first quarter. And I honestly just like Sean Payton overall. As I mentioned in previous videos, I'm a Saints fan, so I'm familiar with Sean Payton as a head coach. And he has really good offensive game plans, especially in the first couple of drives of the game. So I do think the Broncos could keep the game close in the first quarter, as well as the Broncos' money line in the game. I think they're kind of underrated in this game. They played pretty well versus the Colts, even though Bo Nix had 3 interceptions. They were still able to win the game by more than, I think, 15 points. They won like 30-13 versus the Colts. And I do like Bo Nix's chances of having over 200 passing yards in this game. Sean Payton is the coach that relies on his quarterback, and Bo Nix will have the passing attempts in this game. And the Chargers have been pretty bad against wide receivers, which will just increase Bo Nix's chances of getting yards in this game. And one of those wide receivers, Courtland Sutton, and I can for over 75 receiving yards. And if the Broncos are able to win the first quarter and are close to winning the game, I think that'll just lead to the Chargers passing the ball more often, which will lead to Ladd McConkey to have over 50 receiving yards in this game. And at plus 750, I think it's a pretty good payout overall. I put half a unit on this one for a payout of 212 for me, but if you put 1 unit on this parlay, you have a 750% return on investment. Per usual, just have bank consciousness to understand your finances when deciding to place these bets if you decide to place it with me. And then this is the second last long shot parlay at plus 950. So I have under rushing yards for Javonte Williams and Kamani Vidal. I think that both rushing defense are pretty good in this game, and Javonte Williams has gone under this rushing yards mark in, I think, 3 straight games. And Vidal, he's not really known as a rushing running back. He's more used as a passing running back in their system. So I do like their unders in this game, as well as Justin Herbert to have over 11 rushing yards. I think his 11 rushing yards can come just from dropping back and passing more often than they run the ball, which will lead to more scramble opportunities, as well as Josh Palmer to have over 25 plus receiving yards. And watching the Chargers game film, when Justin Herbert scrambles, he doesn't really find McConkey as often as he does find Josh Palmer, who's kind of like closer to the line of scrimmage, running slant routes or just kind of like underneath routes or Texas routes and such. So I do like his chances of over 25 receiving yards in this game. And moreover, if McConkey is covered by Patrick Surtain, like the number one receiver, the number two receiver for the Chargers, Josh Palmer, will have better matchups overall. So at plus 950, I like this odds at half a unit to win 950% return on investment. And as usual, just have bank conscience, understanding your finances when deciding to place these bets. If you do decide to place it with me. And the last long shot parlay that I have in this video is at plus 2,500. It's kind of just a collection of all the things I said in this video. So I have Bo Nix for over 200 passing yards, Sutton for over 75 receiving yards, Herbert for over 200 passing yards, McConkey for over 50 receiving yards, Cameron Dicker for over 8 kicking points, and then Vidal and Williams to go under their rushing yards. I think it'll just be a great game to watch overall, and I think that both teams will kind of lead more towards the pass than the run in this game. And I just really just targeted the number one receivers for both the teams as well as the quarterbacks for both the teams. And I do trust the home team kicker more often just because of familiarity with the stadium to have over 8 kicking points. And as I mentioned before, it can come from 2 touchdowns and 2 field goals, and that's 8 kicking points right there. And at plus 2,500, is a really good payout overall, especially at less than half a unit. So I think it's worth the risk, and hopefully it does pay out. And we'll see in the next NFL videos that I have what the results are. But I really appreciate you guys for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and share this video, so subscribe to my channel. As I mentioned before, I just do this for the enjoyment of sports betting. And stay tuned for more NBA and NFL videos coming out later this week. Hope you guys have a happy holidays, and until next time, peace.